Hey, what's going on? Welcome back. Ikigai here, and today I want to put together a combat strategy guide for Sifu for a lot of the newbies and the beginners and newcomers. So let's jump into it. Every enemy has health, so beating them up and getting the health down to 0 is clearly the one relatively easy way to take them out, but another thing you can do is put a lot of pressure on their structure gauge. You have one too, and that's another way you can take enemies out pretty quickly, or they can take you out pretty quickly. So let's talk about the structure gauge. Basically every character in the game has one of these gauges, and it represents their overall balance and stance. If too much blocking is done, that bar will fill up yellow, eventually it'll turn red, and it'll break and you hear a glass sound. And then at that point, that character is really open for a lot more punishment for a few seconds. They're basically stunned. It's kind of like Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. It's one of my favorite games. They use the same kind of structure in that game with how that whole principle goes. So if you've ever played that, it's kind of the same thing. But there is a difference between your character and the opponent. And I can't stress this enough. This is something you really got to understand early on. Your structure, even if you block a whole bunch, it will be broken very easily from multiple hits. But your enemies, they can block almost indefinitely. It's kind of unfair, but that is how it is. So you're going to have to keep that in mind when you're wailing on people and they're wailing on you. Your structure will break before theirs if you're not careful. The good news is you do have 2 other defensive options when you're really close to people. So let's talk about those really quick. If you can get in the habit of dodging or hitting the block button at the right time, you can parry the attack that your opponent's doing, and then you can follow up with some good strikes which will take their structure out a little faster. And once their structure breaks, you can instantly take them out with a finisher. And finishers are pretty sweet, they look cool, the camera looks really nice, but the finishers are the thing that's going to keep you alive through the fight. You're going to get health for every finisher you do, and there's even some upgrades that you can purchase that will give you more for each knockout you do. So you want to keep doing that as much as you can, and upgrading it as much as you can. But what makes Sifu really interesting from the other games out there is that you don't have a stamina gauge to prevent you from just spamming any move you make. You can just keep going as much as you want. I mean, your opponent's going to block a lot, but if you want to keep spamming, you're free to do so. By the way, you're not going to get really far trying to do it that way. I've tried, I've seen other people try. If you want to spam attacks and go in there and wail on everybody, it might work on the first stage, but after that, there's a couple key enemies that you'll come across, and it's not going to work on them. You'll get killed, and you will literally waste your life trying to fight them with that one attack approach. Basically what Sifu is trying to do here is quietly teach you a really important fundamental, and that is you need to block and dodge with just as much measure as you do attack. You got to be reserved, and you got to know when you need to go all out. Oh, and by the way, there is a power up in the score section of the shrine menus, and it helps restore your structure every time you dodge or parry successfully, which is really good news, because what I've noticed from playing the game is that there's a much smaller window for putting in an input for a parry than it is for a dodge. So you're going to be doing a lot more dodging than you are parrying during the game. If you're really good, you can get those parries down, but most of the time you're going to want to dodge if you're trying to play it safe. Sifu's tutorial is really simple. It's clean. I loved it. They give you everything you need to know to get the game going up front. It's smooth. But there is a few things the game does not tell you. If you hold down the block button and push up or down on a left stick, your character will dodge in that direction. Simple, right? If instead you push up, you'll lift your leg up, or you'll hop and you'll avoid a sweep or a trip. Not only that, but if you can time your dodge perfectly, time will slow down a little bit. You'll see a little bit of gray shadowing around your character, and then you can follow up with some attacks. I've also noticed that if you can dodge left or right with direct attacks, ones that aren't high or low, it seems to make a difference too. So it's not simply just going up or down when your opponent's attacking you. Try and do like some down at an angle or some up at an angle. It seems to work with uppercuts. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But here's a couple things you need to keep in mind when you dodge. First off, you will be doing a lot of it in Sifu. You will be ducking all the time. You will be tapping down way more than up, especially in the early chapters, 1 and 2 for sure. Boss battles, mini bosses, certain enemy types, obviously those are going to be the exceptions there. Another thing to keep in mind is that the control stick inputs that you use don't change. No matter where you are on screen, no matter what the character position is, no matter what the camera angle is, the input's always the same. Down is down, up is up, left, right. They all are the same, they don't change. And I'm really trying to emphasize this because I struggled a lot with it, especially in chapter 2. I didn't really think that that was the case, so if my character was up towards a certain part of the camera, I would think, oh, I need to aim a certain direction. So in reality, what I was doing in those cases was I was putting in the opposite input I needed for a dodge, and I was getting knocked all over the place. I wasn't dodging anything, and I was having a lot of trouble getting through certain sections, especially when I was outnumbered or when I was around certain bosses and they would move me around the screen. I would try and dodge and I would get hit no matter what I was trying to do. It's because the input that I was using was the opposite. It's always down, it's always up, it's always left or right. Try to keep that in mind, learn it and love it. And try to focus on what your opponent is throwing at you and where that attack is angled at. If you try and just spam directions when you block, hoping to get a good dodge in, it might get you far in the first chapter, some of the second chapter, but eventually it's not going to work. So you really got to focus on what they're doing and what direction to dodge in, and don't let the camera or where you are positioned get in the way. And especially that, in my opinion, to be honest with you, the biggest and toughest enemy in the game is not the final boss, any of the mini bosses or the sub bosses. It's actually the camera. The camera is always following you around and trying to ruin your day while it's trying to make everything look cinematic and awesome. 1 second it looks like John Wick, and then it looks like a mod that's breaking. Now, unlike me, if you actually have kung fu reflexes and you can do parrying pretty good, parrying is the best way to get those big rewards. It's a big risk, it's a big reward, simple as that. Like I said before, if you push the block button just as an attack is coming in and to hit you, you will stun your opponent. You'll see a little red flash come up, and that's going to signify that you nailed a parry attack. If it's a single attack coming in and you parry it, you will stun the opponent. At that point, like I said earlier, they're going to be left open to some punishment for a couple seconds. You can do a quick attack and chain that into a combo, or you can throw them, which is a really good thing to add some extra damage in. I'll talk about that in a later video, but it's an option that's really hard to focus on when you're just starting out. So practice it whenever you can. But if you forget that you can do it, that's okay. I know I still do it from time to time. Just know that a parry leaves them open for an attack, and once they're stunned, you go in for some extra punishment. But you need to keep this in mind. There is a difference between post-parry attacks and post-dodge attacks. Post-parry attacks actually can be unlocked from the skill tree. So you can get those from the little shrines, and the ones that you can buy give you extra parry attacks. And these give you more of an incentive and a reward for trying to go for the risky play versus the safe play with dodging. So there you go. There's a little bit of a quick guide for the parry and the dodge mechanic. This amount of information is going to get you far. It's going to get you at least past the first stage. It might get you through the second stage or chapter, whatever you want to call it. There's some way more advanced stuff to really tackle. I'm going to do those in later videos. I really wanted to get this information out there because I know I struggled when I first jumped into the game, and it made me want to learn more about the game and how it works. So what I've learned, I want to share with everybody else and make everybody a better player. Thanks for dropping by. I really appreciate you coming by to watch the video. On your way out, if you wouldn't mind dropping me a like, that'd be really helpful. It'll let me know if this content was valuable enough for you and whether or not I should make more. I'll catch you in the next one. Later.